Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. In this video, my group and I will talk about teaching listening from theory to practice. First starting, I will introduce my group members. The first is Muhammad Sholahuddin. The second is Muhammad Syahrudi. The third is Zaki, Hudan, Fahmi. And the last one is me. So the first presentation will be explained by me. Well, just get started. Successful listening can also be looked at in terms of the strategies the listener uses when listening. A focus on how to listen raises the issues of listening strategies. Strategies can be thought of as the ways in which a learner approaches and manage a task, and listeners can be thought effective ways of approaching and managing their listening. There are two types of strategies in listening. The first is cognitive strategies and the second is metacognitive strategies. Cognitive strategies are mental activities related to comprehending and storing input in working memory or long-term memory for later retrieval. The process that occur in cognitive strategies, namely, the first is comprehension process. Comprehension process is associated with the processing linguistic and non-linguistic input. The second is storing and memory process. Storing and memory process is associated with the storing of linguistic and non-linguistic input in working memory or long-term memory. The third is using and retrieval process. Using and retrieval process is associated with the accessing memory to be ready for output. The third is using and retrieval process. Using and retrieval process is associated with the accessing memory to be ready for output. The next is metacognitive strategies. Metacognitive strategies are those conscious or unconscious mental activities that perform an executive function in the management of cognitive strategies. The process that occur in metacognitive strategies, namely, the first is assessing the situation. Assessing the situation is taking stock of conditions surrounding a language task by assessing one's own knowledge, one's available internal and external research, and the constraint of the situation before engaging in a task. The second is monitoring. Monitoring is determining the effectiveness of one's own or another's performance while engaged in a task. The third is self-evaluating. Self-evaluating is determining the effectiveness of one's own or another performance after engaging in the activity. The fourth is self-testing. Self-testing is testing oneself to determine the effectiveness of one's own language use or the lack thereof. So that's all from me. The presentation will be continued by my friends. Thanks.
This section describes metacognitive strategies. Metacognitive strategies for self-regulation in learner listening. What are metacognitive? Metacognitive skills include taking conscious control of learning, planning, selecting strategies, monitoring the progress of learning, correcting errors, analyzing the effectiveness of learning strategies, and changing learning behaviors and strategies when necessary. Strategies planning. This is a strategy for determining learning objectives and deciding the means by which the objectives can be achieved. General listening development. Identify learning objectives for listening development. Determine ways to achieve these objectives. Set realistic, short-term and long-term goals. Seek opportunities for listening practice. Specific listening tasks. Review main ideas before listening. Rehearse language, e.g. pronunciation, necessary for the text. Decide in advance which aspect of the text to concentrate on. Various learning strategies. Outlining, mind mapping, speed reading, and other learning strategies. Monitoring. This is a strategy for checking on the progress in the course of learning or carrying out a learning task. General listening development. Consider progress against a set of predetermined criteria. Determine how close it is to achieving short-term or long-term goals. Check and see if the same mistakes are still being made. Specific listening tasks. Check understanding during listening. Check the appropriateness and the accuracy of what is understood and compare it with new information. Identify the source of difficulty. The purpose of monitoring is to maintain high concentration and motivation in learning. Evaluation. This is a strategy for determining the success of the outcome of an attempt to learn or complete a learning task. General listening development. Assess listening progress against a set of predetermined criteria. Assess the effectiveness of learning and practice strategies. Assess the appropriateness of learning goals and objectives set. Specific listening tasks. Check the appropriateness and the accuracy of what has been understood. Determine the effectiveness of strategies used in the text. Assess overall comprehension of the text.
In guided metacognitive sequence, we will learn about listening lesson from Ke and Yusnita 2006. The teacher will give learning audio or text to listen by the student. In the first step from this strategy is pre-listening activity. The student will hear an audio and they just predict the possible words that they might hear. In second step, the student will be more active. They will listening the text and search the difficult words. They will underlining or circling the words and also give a short notes about the difficult words. Next step, the students will make collaboration with peer students. The group include 2 persons and they will discuss about the listen result. They will inform the difficult words that are known. Then they will make a note of special words and search the meaning in the second listen session. After that, fourth step is second listen. The students will listen carefully in the part of the special words and make a new notes of a special words. And the last step, the teacher will make a discussion with the students about the strategy that they used and check again about the student understood of the materials.
Listening as a question. Listening surpass the goal of extracting meaning from the messages. The doers learner have to be taught how to use both bottom-up and top-down processes to understand messages. The language of utterance, the phrase, word, sentence, and expression used by speaker are temporary carriers of meaning. Once meaning is identified, there is no further need to advance to the form of messages unless problem in understanding occurred. Teaching listening strategies can help make learners more effective listeners. Tasks employed in classroom material enable listeners to recognize and act on the general, specific, or implied meaning of utterance. What classroom strategies are appropriate for the listening as acquisition phase will process a two-part cycle of teaching activities. First, teaching activities. Second, restructuring activities. The first, teaching activities involve returning to the listening text that served as the basis for comprehension activities and using them as the basis for language awareness. For example, students can listen again to a recording in order to identify difference between what they hear and a brief version of the text, complete a closed version of the text, complete sentence text from the text, check up entries from a list of expressions that occurred in the text. The second, restructuring activities are oral or written tasks that involve productive use of selected items from the listening text. Such activities could include period reading of the tape script in the case of conversational text, written sentence completion task requiring use of the expressions and other linguistic items that occurred in the text, dialogue practice that incorporates items from the text, role plays in which students are required to use key language from the text.